Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Recovering Libtard podcast. If you've made it this far, we're in episode 3. Thank you for sticking around, and I hope that you stick around a little bit more. We're about to get into some really good interviews and just a journey of me trying to learn how to be a better person and how to be more logical with my decisions. So today we're going to watch a video about Candace Owens. I just started hearing about her after breaking away from the Liberal Party after the vaccine rollout because people just went crazy and I couldn't take it anymore. So I started following a lot of Republican pages and conservative pages, and I found her, and I think that she's absolutely astounding and brilliant, and I would love to learn more about her. I think that we disagree on some things, but overall I think that she is an amazing role model as a woman, to be very just sure of herself, confident, and I think that comes from actually doing research and not being afraid to go out into the world and talk to people. So we're gonna watch this video from the Rubin Report and let's see what she has to say. Oh my god, an ad.
The Trump, I hate America. Everyone offered them money and flights. I think you might have. Don Jr. might have. Nobody took the bait, right? Because they know America is the greatest place they could possibly live.
I think we don't know that until we've been.
So Blackout for me, I really wanted to first and foremost lay out my personal story.
I have not read her book yet, but it's definitely on my list.
Been a lot of conjecture about where I came from, how I became conservative. Is she a fraudulent conservative? And all of that craziness, because people don't realize that I just was apolitical, if anything else.
So to be clear, you're not some sort of secret agent.
No, remember, you really have been there through all of it.
I've been there since the beginning.
I mean, the YouTubers digesting my entire life, saying she must be a plant, a Soros plant. I'm I've never even voted. I literally prior to getting into things, I genuinely just was not politically inclined.
Yeah.
And I just thought I had to be a Democrat and thought I had to be a liberal, and looking.
Same.
In the retrospect, I realized how foolish that is. That I didn't realize that everything that bad happened in my life was really routed to bad policies and bad politicians. But I wanted to first lay out just my personal story. The subtitle of the book is How Black America Can Make Its Second Escape from the Democrat Plantations. And I do believe, I say this all the time, people get upset, that Black Americans are still enslaved today, that the left just got smarter and they realized that you can't enslave people, their bodies. You can't have Black Americans on the plantation anymore, but you can still have Black Americans doing all of the work for you and reaping no benefit. And that is a structure that we see today between Black America and the Democrat Party. We are doing all of the work, we carry them over the finish line, and we benefit not in one single way. And so I really kind of lay out that argument and talk about what slave life was really like, the breakdown of family, why it was necessary for families to be broken down, to trade, constantly be trading slaves from one plantation to the next. They could have no feelings for one another. Frederick Douglass, in his autobiography, the first couple of pages, and he starts talking about his life as a slave, he talks about the fact that when his mother died, he felt nothing. When his sisters were traded, he felt nothing. He had no sense of kinship, no familial love for his own blood. That was necessary to the institution of slavery. We still have...
And the breakdown of the family nucleus is also necessary to communism. Hence what we're seeing today with the school trying to raise children, take them away from the parents. It's very interesting to see who's on board with that, and they're take my kids, and then the people who are no, my kids are my kids, I want to raise them.
that kinship and that relationship and that community still broken down all of these years later, despite the Reconstruction era post-slavery, which we saw Black American families getting back together. We were doing something. It's all been wiped away.
At a higher rate, by the way,
rate.
Until about 72 or so.
Yeah, in the 1950s, Black Americans were outpacing whites in terms of economic growth. And then immediately following, the 1960s and the Great Society Act and the systemic oppression, which started via the welfare system, everything started falling apart.
That's what I've heard too. Has the welfare system reduced poverty or increased it? And since the onset, it's only grown. So I think that she's right about that.
Reading, another topic, going back to slavery. Black Americans, it was illegal for Black Americans to learn how to read. In fact, it was so illegal that if you were a white person, you were taught and you were caught teaching your slave to read, you would be found guilty too. It was a serious sin. The reason for that is because they didn't want Black people being educated, because an educated mind can't be enslaved. Well, what's changed? Look at the illiteracy rates in Black America today. Look at Baltimore. Look at the inner cities. Look at, we're in California. California, 70% of Black boys could not pass a basic literacy exam.
And these are democratic states?
Nobody is talking about that. You have politicians that are standing on stage saying that all they care about is Black Americans. They're not talking about everything that is harming Black Americans today, everything that is recreating the very same plantations that we came from.
Did you catch that brilliant line that Bernie had in one of the debates, which is he's not only so pro-marijuana that he wants it to be legal, but he also wants to have black business owners owning Black marijuana shops in Black communities.
I did not catch that
And again,
line.
I say this as someone that's pro-legalizing weed,
Right.
but like, we're going to incentivize Black people to own Black marijuana shops in Black communities. That
Right, and that's why I don't celebrate, by the way, why I am conservative on the marijuana front is because when you talk about where this is happening, Chicago, I think, just passed marijuana laws. It is, to me, I know it's going to lead to more dysfunction, amongst Black America first and foremost, because that's how it always is. It's what is it about progressive policies that always leads to progressive results for the Black community first and foremost, and so I am loath to be smart enough to see the debate between alcohol and marijuana, so that I can't firmly say no to marijuana. But I have a thinking brain, and I just don't see how conservatives can make a sound argument against it at the moment.
What else has to happen for the Black community to break? I'm going to guess, although I don't have the book yet, that at the end you either make some predictions or you tell people what tools they need to really break out of this.
Yeah, it's not even about making predictions, and I have my own personal predictions, but I definitely am not doing that in the book. I'm giving Black Americans a guide. I'm giving Black Americans an option. The same option that I saw before me when I started waking up, and I'm having this conversation with you. You can have the option to accept this victim narrative, right? You can have the option to say, I accept this diagnosis of cancer, even though I feel fine, walk fine, and have been living fine my entire life. I accept that it's terminal illness, and I'm going to live like I'm going to die any moment. Or you can develop a different perspective, and you can develop a victor mentality, as I say. Forget the victim mentality, develop a victor mentality. Look back at your ancestors. Look back at your grandparents. Look back at what they did, what they lived through, the seeds that they planted, so that you can afford to be in the circumstance that you are in today. If you are a Black American and you are breathing in the United States today, you are the luckiest, among the luckiest of Black people that have ever lived anywhere on the face of the planet. That is an incredible statement. All of human history, the luckiest Black people that have ever lived on the face of the human planet are the ones that are living and breathing in America today, okay? If you understand that, and you should understand it by simply saying, where would you like to live in Africa? For all that hoopla about, they took us from Africa, find me a Black American that will tell you they want to move back to Africa. I will, listen, right now.
Or Europe. Why is it no?
I'll book the flights for them, right? For any person that says we were stolen from our ancestors, I, Candace Owens, am pledging that I will book the flights if you renounce your U.S. citizenship for you to go live back in Africa.
You want to cap this at maybe at 10 people,
Nope,
just in case people are punking
there's
you?
None. There's none. We did this. We did the same craziness with the Trump. I hate America. Everyone offered them money and flights. I think you might have. Don Jr. might have. Nobody took the bait, right? Because they know America is the greatest place they could possibly live.
And you know what? If someone takes you up on this, I'll guarantee one first class upgrade.
That's amazing.
I will do that.
There we go, right here.
I will
One
do that.
first-class upgrade
There
to
you
go to
go.
America, but you have to renounce your citizenship to America and move to Africa. If that's really what you want to do.
As a friend, I know that the stuff that you talk about publicly, even when I'm like, Candace went a little overboard on that one, I'm like, I know that is you. That really is you. And we told the story once, but the day that lockdown started, you were on my show in LA. We didn't know at the time we were taping that lockdowns were about to happen.
Right.
You were literally coughing up blood. You were coughing up blood. Your friend or your assistant at the time was there also. She was sick.
Yeah.
David's looking at me like, we're gonna be trapped in the house for months with Candace. She's gonna die here, like it's all over. But you were just like, no, I don't have COVID, I'm fine. Like it has something to do with the pillows at the hotel.
Yeah, I was
and
having
everyone's
an allergic
insane
reaction
and
to
I'm gonna
feathered
get the hell out of
pillows.
here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was so funny actually in retrospect, like the worst timing of me having an allergic reaction to feathered pillows and like your husband was not buying it. He's like, no, she's dying of COVID. Like Googling like to see like what was happening. But yeah, you know, and that was actually the last event I did before they sort of locked down everything, and all my events, you know, necessarily got canceled, but not because of me. I mean, I attended everything. You know, I was pregnant during COVID. I traveled the country. I traveled the world. I went to Croatia. I went to England. I just did not have this fear. I can't explain it. It was too convenient, and it also obviously didn't help their case that they had predicted the coronavirus pandemic, the World Economic Forum a year prior. You know, I think what we're dealing with right now is a very sinister, evil globalist agenda. And that is not a conspiracy. I think that is a fact. And they want to exert control over every single element of our lives. And unfortunately, you have people that are pliable to that control because they're fearful, and also people that are just lazy. So one element is that people are happy to be controlled because they're fearful. The other element is because control is easy. If you don't have to think for yourself and somebody just plugs you into a system and says, do this, I mean, freedom is hard. Freedom is hard work. Personal responsibility is hard. Growing your own vegetables, hey, that's pretty hard, right? It's kind of easy to just go to the grocery store and have it being prepared.
Yeah.
People don't like to do things that are difficult. They want things to be handed easily for them, and that's why we have, you know, the extraordinary welfare system that we have.
Why are you not afraid? I know you're not, but everyone is basically afraid, seemingly. But I don't know, is it your wiring? Is it something you learned very early on? Like, why do you always, you see the thing in the distance and you just go right to it? For as many times as Twitter tried to take you out, or New York Times, or whoever it is, you just keep going and going and going.
Yeah, you know, I get that question all the time, and the truth is that, like, I'm my granddaddy's granddaughter. I mean, he just was a tough guy. He just passed in September. I obviously dedicated my book to him, my first book to him. And, you know, I have just always looked at my life in comparison to his. And it's the reason why when people talk about their oppression, I think of a man who grew up in segregated South, who never, ever, ever spoke about being oppressed, never spoke about why people were racist, never spoke about how the white man was after him. He just got up every day and he worked. And he did that from the time he was 5 years old on a sharecropping farm. I find this generation of individuals to be a little bit pathetic. I think we're a little bit pathetic. I think, you know, the greatest generation that ever lived, you know, yielded the most pathetic generation that's ever lived, which is we're walking among us today. We just can't do anything for ourselves.
I mean, honestly, it feels like a bunch of crybabies, you know, from people on Twitter saying that they're not going to use Twitter anymore because Elon is on it, or Elon owns it, to like the old rock stars who are like, I'm going to pull my album from Spotify because Joe Rogan's on there. So she's kind of right in that respect.
And I don't want to be that. And the other thing is I'm just wired this way. I was like this since I was a little girl. My parents always tell stories about me like I was just one of those precocious kids that just never allowed an adult to tell me what to do without reason. I never responded to arbitrary authority. Like I was one of those kids that if your parents were like, well, you know, clean your bed or Santa's not going to come, I would say like, you tell him not to come, right? And so they were always laughing and having to close the door to reprimand me because I was kind of like this little adult. And I think in my character is really just that I respect authority. But the authority can't be arbitrary. It needs to make sense. And if it doesn't make sense, you're
supposed to trust the science. I mean, come on. Trust the experts. Your Google search is not as good as somebody's 4-year degree.
Okay with it, then, you know, that sets up the grounds for slavery. And I'm not a slave.
You are not a slave, that is for sure. But will you be a politician?
Will I be a politician? I get this question all the time, and I used to say no, and now I say never say never. You know, I've had those conversations with my husband before about what it would actually mean, and I definitely would never be in Congress, I can tell you. absolutely not. I've done 2 of those hearings. I would rather honestly pull out all of my fingernails.
That was one of your best moments. The one with
Yeah.
you and Ted Lieu was like
Yeah.
really incredible. And then remember, we had that event. I don't even remember where we were that night, but like you left that event, you destroyed everyone there.
Yeah.
And then you just go on with your life.
Bye. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, these people are just are real losers setting
Something else I gotta watch too.
up all these hearings. But
She just said Congress is a bunch of losers.
if
But are
I
you
felt,
nervous in any of those things? Like I do this
No.
for a living too, and I don't really get nervous, but I haven't sat in front of Congress and
Yeah, well, you know what?
and just destroyed them
Well,
the
let
way
me tell you
did.
something. Congress works for you, not the other way around.
Yeah.
I actually think that the way that that whole little auditorium is set up is wrong. Why are they above me?
Yeah.
I should be.
Literally, they're
Yeah, they're literally above you, and
Yeah.
I believe that we should literally be above them. I don't even like the way it's set up. And this is the idea. We've gotten this idea that they're above us. They're not. They literally work for us. And
They are not our idols and they are not our leaders. She's right.
the majority of them on the Democrat side are a bunch of scumbags, and they're working to destroy this country. They've sold us out. A lot of them have been in D.C. forever and are just corrupt and trying to fill their own pockets. So I had no fear. I was angry at the obvious setup and the attempt to play me, and I was happy that I was able to expose them for what they were. But I don't have fear, of people that are essentially my employees.
Do you have anyone that you've been trying to talk to get into a debate with that has refused them? There's got to be some, but you've done a couple of these, like with Russell Brand, who you had major differences with, and a couple other people. I find it very hard to get these people to talk at this point because we are racist, homophobic bigots. Is there anyone like that's like on your list that you feel like if you could just get them to break, maybe it would do something really big?
Not anymore, because obviously there's just been this long frustration with realizing that they love to talk about you to garner clicks, but when you say, hey, show up, if you're about it, show up, they always say no. I mean, I think even last week we invited Anna Kasparian. I think she's dedicated hours and hours of coverage of me, and I have dedicated literally 0 seconds of coverage to her. And I said, okay, let's have her on the show and have a civil conversation. And she declined. So Russell Brand is an amazing human being. He really is. And he's saying stuff. The reason why he was willing to host me and is willing to host others is because he genuinely believed what he was saying, right?
I like Russell Brand. I think that we should all listen to him and decide whether or not we agree with what he's saying, because I do agree with a lot of what he has to say and disagree with some stuff, but some stuff is like not as important as the other things that he's saying, like a globalist takeover.
If you genuinely believe what you are saying, even if it's wrong, but you believe it to be true, I can deal with that, right? And we can talk and we can have a conversation because we both want to become better and we both want to discover the truth. If you know what you are saying is a lie and you tell about lie day in and day out, you have to hide, right? Because you can't face yourself and you can't face the truth. So I always think that kind of marks the difference in the personalities that we see on the left, and there's not too many of them that are willing to sit down with people on the right.
So out of all the people that I've interviewed, and we've talked about this many times privately, but out of all the people that I interviewed, we finished that first interview, I turned to David, I was like, that girl is going to be a superstar. It was just so obvious. But did you have this plan at all? Like, I know you were kind of curious and you were figuring it out, and there were 1 or 2 things that I asked you about politics that you were kind of like, I don't know yet, I don't want to comment on that yet, which I thought was pretty impressive, actually. But you have just like marched forward. The machine has tried to destroy you how many times now?
Yeah.
You keep a running count?
Definitely have lost count. And I think, again, kind of hinting at the naivety of that first interview, which is really beautiful to watch, is that I just never could have imagined that people would try to destroy me. I never would have imagined even that I wasn't allowed to not have an opinion on some things, that I wasn't allowed to grow as a person and say I'm still learning, because I was still learning. I had ideas and feelings about things, but I didn't really have the facts on my side. And I had no idea that when you're in politics, it's just not, they're just looking to expose you, and she's a fake, she's a fraud, oh, look, she doesn't know this, she's stupid. So I had to grow up pretty quick, and really kind of sharpen my figurative sword and really get ready and do a lot of studying. But yeah, I could have never imagined. I had no plan. I was just saying what I thought to be real and what I thought to be true.
Yeah, and I know that you're not just saying it, because every time I've been with you when we've done road gigs together or whatever, like you've got 10 books with you. We had dinner at your house last night. You're working on farming now. Like you're always just trying to learn more and more. And I will be welcomed at your off-location site, right? When the grid goes down and everything else
when
happens.
the grid goes down, yeah. I actually, as you just hinted on, like I'm kind of going through this thing now where I realize that we are all dependents and we are all on welfare if we don't know how to grow our own food and support ourselves.
That's one of the points in the World Economic Forum's Klaus Schwab saying there's like an excess of useless eaters. And, what if there's like another virus? We have to make sure that the world economy will still run. And yeah, we are plugged into the world economy every time we buy something at the store. So I think that she is very smart and going in the direction of like homesteading and living off grid is one of the best ideas so far.
And I think that that really speaks to the drama of this administration, of realizing that I know a lot of Americans empathize with the idea that we feel like we're losing our country and that we really have communists in the White House.
Yeah.
And we are watching all of Americans be depressed. And in that vein, I said to myself, if this really does hit, right? If we are suddenly living in a communist country in 3 years, 4 years, however you want to call it, can I fend for myself?
2 months, I think.
Yeah, 2 months, right. Yeah. Can I fend for myself? Can I grow my own food? What do I know about living off of the land? So that is something, yeah, that I'm just now learning now, and what better place to do it than in Tennessee, right?
Candace Owens, AKA Red Pill Black, welcome to the Rubin Report.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here right now.
I am very happy
Excited
to have you here. Should I be calling you Candace or Red Pill Black? How are we going to do this?
I guess people are calling me Red Pill Black, so either or. You can call me Candace.
Yeah. You said you were just walking down the street. Someone, there's Red Pill Black.
Yeah, there's Red Pill Black. And I'm like, I'm Candace. But I'm glad it's catching. I like Red Pill Black, so.
So before you were a YouTuber, which you're actually pretty new to, you went by Candace in
I
the
went by
real
Candace,
world.
yeah.
All right. Well, I feel like we're going to be on the level, so I'm going to go with Candace
Yeah.
while we're sitting here. So you have a crazy story, an interesting evolution. You suddenly caught fire, and you're doing pieces all over the place. You were on the Daily Wire this morning. I saw you on Jesse Waters. Was it this past weekend, right?
Correct.
Just a couple days ago. Saw a clip of that. You're bouncing around. You're making moves. Who is this Candace person? All right, let's just do some history for the people that don't know about you at all.
I am honestly, I'm just a girl that makes videos. The history is I grew up in Stamford, Connecticut. I went to school at the University of Rhode Island, pursued a degree in journalism, which is quite ironic.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Someone that studied journalism that's trying to tell the truth? This is fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. After college, I was in a lot of student loan debt. I came from a family that doesn't have any money whatsoever, and I had to just pay it back. So the smartest move for me was to go into finance. I hit the ground running in New York City, worked at a private equity firm for 4 years, left that firm and wanted to do my own anti-bullying startup thing that went really sideways when the left tried to do hit pieces on me during the election, and that was my red pill moment.
Really? So
Yeah.
wait, how did doing an anti-bullying thing get you caught up in the left?
So I don't know if many people that watch this show are familiar with the Gamergate scandal. I certainly wasn't.
I think most of my audience is familiar-ish, but like nobody fully gets it. I think. But feel free to take us down that road for a little bit.
Yeah, so long story short, that whole scandal is built on a girl named Zoe Quinn who says that she was attacked by anonymous white men on the internet. And people were saying that that wasn't true, and she said that it was. And
if they were anonymous, how did she know their skin color?
I don't know. If you read the pieces in the media, it's fascinating,
Yeah.
So I was doing an anti-bullying startup that I was really passionate about, and I got a phone call from her, and I put up basically a 3-minute video on Kickstarter teasing what we were going to do. And I said this one sentence, which was a figure of speech that I think set the alarms off. I said, what we're doing is figuratively lifting the masks up off of trolls. At the time, she was working at Twitter. She was working for Twitter for something called Crash Override Network, and I immediately received an inbox from her on Twitter saying she'd like to talk to me about and try to convince me that the project that I'm doing is bad, which is very interesting.
Yeah.
So she calls me up, and I have no idea who she is. I don't know what Gamergate is. I don't know what doxing means. And she says, you have to pull your project because people actually don't want to find out who harassed them. She said, I'm a victim, but I never want to know who harassed me on the internet. Like, she was basically arguing a point that didn't make sense. If she was actually harassed on the internet, then obviously my technology would be a godsend, because they never figured out who harassed her. And I said, I appreciate the phone call. This isn't really making sense to me.
Yeah. It sounds literally the reverse of what you'd think she would have called you to say.
Absolutely. Like, she should have been on board with what I was doing. I totally appreciate the phone call, but I'm not going to pull my Kickstarter. And she started crying. And she said, if you don't, it's going to ruin everything. And she told me that she spends time on 4chan because of what she does, and she saw that people were already talking about my project, and if I didn't pull it, these anonymous white men and Trump supporters, you have to remember this was during the election cycle, were going to come after me and dox my family, which essentially means put up their personal information so people can try to kill them. That's what she says.
So she said this is what they are going to do to you. So she was oddly threatening you with being doxxed, but it wasn't she that was going to dox you.
She thought I was a total moron, I think, and I'm like, okay.
That is like so scary. Even if like it's not true and they're just trying to scare you, like somebody threatening your family, I'd be like freaking out.
I'm not pulling my project. She hangs up the phone crying. Within 2 hours, we were absolutely inundated. About 4,000 emails via Kickstarter, like, nigger, 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 die, 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 pull your project. And they have these super obvious screen names like, Trump or die, Trump 2020, white man behind computer.
That's a good one. That guy's always tweeting me.
So, and I'm like, is she kidding? All men, by the way. Everyone was like, Dave at, Bob at, no woman. And magically, everything that she tried to warn me about came true within a couple of hours of me refusing to pull my project. So I tweet very quickly, again, not really knowing the bread and butter of the Gamergate scandal. I said, all I can say is that 100% after speaking with Zoe Quinn, this girl was never harassed. She's doing the harassing. And the next morning I woke up, The Guardian, The Washington Post, and New York Magazine were all calling me. I was a nobody with a Kickstarter that was 3 minutes long. Kickstarter pulled my project, and the next day, big media. And in my head, I'm thinking, journalism major, Washington Post, amazing. Like, at that point, I considered myself a liberal, Democrat, if you will. And so I was like, great, I'm going to talk to them. I'm going to tell them about this girl. They're going to write the piece,
I have a bad feeling where this is about to go.
This is sideways.
Okay.
So I speak to a person named Jesse Singal. He works for New York Magazine, and he's like, yeah, I saw your tweets.
He's not a fan of mine.
No, he is a journalist hitman, as I like to call them. And he speaks to me, he's like, yeah, I saw your tweets. I just wanted to speak to you about what happened, super nice. Yeah, and I tell him everything. I'm like, yeah, Zoe called me up, open and shut case. Obviously, she told me to pull my project. I didn't, and then I got harassed. He instead writes this article, and the tone of it was essentially trying to gaslight me. Oh, she seemed like a nice girl, but she got dragged into this conspiracy theory. Zoe actually is a girl that was harassed, And at that point, I realized, oh my God, like the media is going to try to kill my project, and these journalists are absolutely lying. So the Washington Post called me, and I had the good sense to actually record it. I just turned on my camera and said, something fishy's here. And this girl was obvious. This girl, Caitlin Dewey, was asking me questions, and she was trying to figure out who was funding us. And her job, or her role, was to cut off the funding, cut off the legs of Social Autopsy so it could never see the light of day. And she started calling around, so I actually got a tip that she had already written the article and she was going to try to smear me. And I essentially went back and forth with the Washington Post. I had caught her in a lie via email versus what she said on the phone, and they pulled the article last second and told me I wasn't important enough to run it anyways when I threatened to sue them.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right, wait, there's so much here, and it's so related to everything, and we haven't even fully got to your political awakening yet.
Yeah.
So first off, I love that you said they're hitmen.
Yes, journalists are
journalists.
Hitmen. Yep.
Yeah, because the phrase, I mentioned it to you right before we started, I've been saying they're activists, not journalists, but they're hitmen.
Absolutely.
Is what they really are. So you wake up to all this. How quickly did that jump to the way you thought about politics?
Instantly. I mean, I became a conservative overnight. I realized that liberals were actually the racists, that liberals were actually the trolls. And then at the very same time, 'cause you have to remember, this is April 2000.
You got to look in the mirror.
2016. Trump is on the screen saying that the media is lying, that CNN is fake, that all of this, it all began to resonate with me because I realized that everything he was saying was true. So I no longer bought into this idea when they were calling him a racist, a rapist, a white nationalist, everything. I bought none of it because I knew that the media hired hitmen.
I bought into it. I was a libtard through that whole presidency, pretty much the whole thing. Maybe up until the very end, I started to actually use my brain and not be swayed by these like pounding headlines like, oh my god, look at him, like he did this and he did that and blah blah blah. It's like nobody cares.
And they were doing the most ridiculous hit job on Donald Trump from start to finish of his campaign.
Yeah. All right. So I want.
It's crazy how much that worked on me, at least, because I remember when he was voted in, I was so upset, and I think that has to play into, you know, team versus team. So if you're not with us, you're against us, and the other team is like so evil and so racist and so just like mean and like arrogant, and like you're just like filled with like this rage. And if you ever read 1984, it's kind of like that, except you don't realize that you have a choice. Or at least I didn't, because like everyone around me is like, go Patriots, go Patriots, go Democrats, go Democrats. Patriots is the football team, not the actual patriots that like fight the wars and stuff.
I want to put Trump aside for a
Fight
second,
for
but
freedom.
we will get back to Trump. But I'm just completely fascinated by your story. So okay, so you get this now about the media,
Right?
Right. But did it? So what changed within you politically when you say you went from being a liberal to a conservative? Like, did you change on economics or on abortion or weed or gay marriage or?
You know, when I think back on it, I don't even know that I ever really was a liberal. I didn't care about politics.
Yeah.
So you have to think about this. I'm just a girl that was trying to pay back my student loans. I wasn't involved in politics. I didn't really know what being a liberal meant, what being conservative meant. I think at the end of the day, I was always a
Same.
conservative. I'm pretty rational. I'm very fact-based.
I feel the same way. Like, I didn't know what a liberal was. I didn't really know what a conservative was. I didn't want to follow politics. I thought it was all BS. And it is BS. It's a clown show. But it's important to know what you're talking about, I think, because if you vote wrong and you're not just voting at the polls, but voting with your dollar, voting with your voice on social media, talking and like rallying the angry mob to be like, you know, let's bring a guillotine to Jeff Bezos' house. Like, that doesn't make any sense. It's like mean and evil and bullying. And
in terms of, I will always value, like, you know, economics above like social issues and that sort of thing, as I understand that that should take a back seat, obviously. You don't want to become a third world country, you know. You know,
While screaming about
yeah,
pronouns.
exactly. So I think I was.
we don't want to become a third world country while we scream about our pronouns. This is basically our future. We're going to have, like right now, we're pretty much useless because we were raised to be useless. We were raised to be, you know, sit in our chair and don't move, and you'll get a job and you'll get food and shelter. So we'll see what happens in the future with future generations.
Always a conservative, or more conservative in that regard, but I started really deeply considering politics, my positions on everything, because of that experience.
Yeah. Where are you on the social stuff?
I think I'm, what specifically what?
Well, like gay marriage or
Oh,
weed or
I support gay
abortion and
marriage,
stuff.
yeah. I support gay marriage. I'm not really sure about abortion. I don't really have a position on that just yet. I think through that a lot. I have so many people and friends that have been through it.
Wow, look at you, a conservative, saying I don't have an answer on that.
Yeah, I don't have an answer on
I
that.
thought you guys are all supposed to be
Yeah,
evil,
right.
rush to judgment, kind of.
Yeah, no, I'm open, and I make it very clear to everyone that I'm still learning. I'm still developing. I don't want to be one of these people that sits down and pretends I know that I know absolutely everything, because I think that that's the problem in the world right now, is that everyone is pretending to know
She's
everything,
right.
and people aren't willing to learn.
Yeah.
And if I can go from someone who's
Because that's how we're raised. We're raised in government school to know everything. We have to memorize all the answers. And that way we know everything. If we don't know everything, then we fail. And failure is like horrendous, and it keeps you back a year, and you're like the laughing stock at the school. So nobody wants to fail. And it's just like a psychological thing.
thought that they were on the left, to someone who is, I think, more centrist and more conservative in a matter of 365 days, then would do me a lot of good to continue to keep listening and to continue to keep growing.
When you started coming out, you did that great video when you were red pill black way back when, coming out as a conservative,
And did you expect just to get love, and then next thing you know, you get some love, but like the crazy hate?
I would say the thing that surprised me the most, and it's something that I never forgot about, actually, Charlie Kirk, I guess, sort of had more of a vision that I was going to be very successful and gain a lot of followers. You kind of had that sort of that same vision too. I didn't see it in the beginning. I was just sort of doing what felt right. And he sat me down and he made me read an article of things that can change in your life when you gain a little bit of fame. And I read it sort of, okay, this is good to plug into the back of your mind, but I don't know if this is going to actually be applied into my life. And now my husband actually says to me a quote. He doesn't know which Beatle said it, but he's apparently they said, "Fame doesn't change you; it changes everybody around you." Right. And I think that's just such an interesting quote. So one thing that I experienced jumping into this was I was the same Candace. I've always been this Candace. I've always been the outspoken Candace. I've been a little different. I've always been convicted, whether I was convicted as a liberal and thinking this is exactly who I want to be and held my convictions. I was always the same person. So to watch people spin me into a caricature, and then I think the worst part was losing family members. That totally
Yeah.
shocked me. So when I was reading your chapter and thinking about, the shock, and you speak about someone who was literally at your wedding or was invited to your wedding.
Invited, didn't
And
didn't didn't respond to the wedding invitation, but yeah, was invited to my wedding.
went through the exact same thing. I had family members who didn't even respond, didn't even honor my wedding with a response. Because I was a conservative, so that was somebody that you can't deal with anymore. And I think that is sort of one of the biggest shocks, I think, of knowing that you can be the exact same person, and rather than discuss an idea with you, you're just considered completely done. You're just completely barred from your close families and your friends, and that's
Isn't that crazy? Like, why can't we have conversations about stuff instead of being like, I'm right, and I don't know why I'm right, but I'm fucking right.
such a valid point when you're giving your list of things for people to just, I love that, the advice that you give in each chapter, knowing that your friendships are going to change. Your friendships change a lot.
Well, the more that I learn about her, the more that I watch her talk, I'm just like really, really impressed. And she's definitely someone that I would keep on my radar as someone to watch and someone to like learn from, because she seems very diligent about her actions, not just like doing things because they're popular or doing things because she saw them on a TV show. It's like she thinks about it. She like turns the wheels in her head that it's like, okay, well, what about this aspect? What about that aspect? So it was great to see her talk, and especially great to see her like throughout the years, to see how she, like her demeanor in the beginning in 2017 when she's like kind of just like more like relaxed, and then presently where she's like this like strongly convicted woman who like knows what she's talking about and knows what she wants and has like this wealth of knowledge and information in her head. So I think she's amazing, and that's my opinion of Candace Owens. So I hope that you can form your own opinion of her. I hope that you will have an evolving opinion. I myself don't like to set anything in stone because I like to keep evaluating and evolving, you know? So that's going to do it for the Recovering Libtard podcast, episode 3. And next episode, I'm going to have a guest on, so stay tuned for that. Peace! And also, buy my book!